Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, I know I say it every episode. I will continue to say it. Thank you guys so much for the support, emails, messages, all the things that you've sent the show's way. I truly appreciate it. I read all of them. And I love hearing your guys' feedback, your suggestions for topics. And I encourage you to please keep those things coming, because it helps me generate some really cool ideas and some topics to talk about with my hosts, or my guests rather. Today, what we're going to do is talk about an issue that is, I think, always been important, but is seemingly more so now than ever. And that is talking about the concept of maintaining and growing player confidence. I think that kind of in the day and age that we live in, and I know that makes me sound old, we have a lot of players who maybe are not as confident, even as, teenagers are never confident, but even more so now. I think of social media and all the things that may be out there. Our kids are wavering a little bit with their confidence. And I think it's really important for us, when we build our programs and we work with our players, to grow their confidence, maintain their confidence, and keep them excited and enjoying this great game of basketball. So at all levels, this is something that's topical, whether you're at the youth level, the high school level, the college level, shoot, even the professional level. I'm sure maintaining confidence is super important. So that's what we're going to jump into today with my guest on the travel side of things right now, coaching at the Minnesota Crossfire boys coach. Very happy to be joined by Coach Sam Frederickson today. Coach, again, really appreciate you coming on here, talking to us and joining us. How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing well. I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, Mike.
Absolutely. Coach, let's start with your journey. I know you're kind of relatively new in terms of your journey. You're kind of getting going on your basketball journey and your coaching journey, but talk to us about where this game of basketball has taken you and where your coaching journey has taken you. And I know it's kind of maybe a little bit of a unique journey compared to maybe some others have had.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I'm just starting with the coaching journey. I'm only 25 years old. I've only coached 3 different teams so far in my career. I started out a couple years ago coaching the 5th grade team at my old school here in Minnesota. Fast forward to last year, a year later, I was able to coach the same kids as 6th graders on the team. And I was blessed with a really great group of kids, great families. And it was all around a great experience. And last spring was able to kind of jump into the travel atmosphere and coach at the AAU level, a 13U squad here in Minnesota for a really good organization called Crossfire. And that's really where my journey's at so far, and looking currently for kind of the next step. So it's the cool place to be, not knowing the next step. There's a lot of potential out there, and it's just kind of excited to see where, the whole coaching journey will take me here, not only this year, but, moving down the road.
Yeah. So many options and so many things that are kind of available and pathways for you to take. It's such an exciting thing to have potentially so many doors that are open to you. So let me ask first, as I kind of hear you talk about your journey, about what was it like kind of stepping into that role, day one of your coaching journey. I'm about 12 years removed from that moment, and I kind of remember it, but it's not super fresh in my mind, but it is for you. And I want to talk about, what was that like for you when you kind of stepped in and, you were the coach walking in for the first time, and then the players were looking up to you for that first time as, this is the guy who's coaching us.
Yeah, I had a pretty smooth transition. So when I first started a couple years ago for the 5th grade team, I got a late jump to it. So they had already played a couple games, and they had a parent coach who was volunteering, helping out at the time. And so my first actually experience, we didn't have any practices with that league. It was a small kind of house league where you only played on Saturday nights for a couple games. There was like 3 teams in the league, or 4 teams. So you were playing the same teams over and over, and mostly just for fun and to get kids into the game, which is a great, thing to do at that age. And I had the parent coach kind of ease me into it a little bit the first game, which was awesome to have. And, the week following after that, I was able to kind of take the reins and go from there. But it was a great experience. It was cool. It was I think the fifth grade level and really the youth level is a great kind of starting point. It's fairly low pressure, as opposed to maybe like the high school or collegiate side where, there is kind of that added pressure into winning games and that sort of thing. And so for me, it was a really great starting point. And, it's you learn a lot in the first couple of years and you sure do still, even at the youth level. I mean, you're learning every single day and trying to perfect your craft as much as you can. Like we challenge our kids to perfect their craft every day, and we have to do the same. So just continually learning. And again, I was blessed to be put in a pretty good situation right away with low pressure and great
Yeah.
kids and a great group of parents.
Real cool thing that I always liked when I did a lot more work, at the younger levels, even at the middle school level, is I found that I really had to, and I'm thankful I started my coaching journey at the middle school levels. It really forced me to communicate effectively in the way that I
Right.
communicate things, because kids can only handle so many things in so many directions at once, and you can't over explain things like I want to do and tend to do. So you really have to be like direct and concise with your language and say things that are like very simple, very straightforward, things that they can understand. And I think it really challenges you in a good way as a coach about your ability to communicate something simply but effectively.
It absolutely does. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And you definitely learn how to convey the most important points right away. And, again, that's kind of perfecting your craft as you go. But yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So one of the things I know you're passionate about, Coach, is helping players become better teammates, and that's a evergreen topic. I think we always want, no matter how great of team chemistry we have, we always want our players to be helping each other out, being the best teammates they can. So, talk to us about what you kind of do to put players in situations where they're, intentionally or maybe, without even realizing it, working on their teamwork and kind of bonding as a team. And you can talk about this either on the court or off the court. How do you kind of get that teamwork aspect kind of going?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And I'm a huge, huge advocate for off the court activity.
Hmm.
No matter what it is, whatever you're doing, whether it's like a team dinner, team lunch, taking them to Top Golf, maybe a community service, volunteering with the team, whatever it is, I'm a huge advocate of that. I think it's a really phenomenal way to grow the relationships and grow, the chemistry and really the bond of not only coaches and their kids, but the players with each other too. And I'll give you an example. So that the AU team I coached for last spring made up of mostly kids who didn't know each other. They didn't know these other kids existed. They've never met them, never interacted with them, which is kind of the case for most AU teams, I would say, especially at that age. And we only had 4 practices before our first tournament. And the first two, we had half the kids on spring break. And then the second two, we had the other half on spring break. So we didn't have a full practice before our first game. So we had kids meeting each other for the first time on, game day, on day one for our first game. And it went fine when we ended up losing by 4 to the team that eventually won the tournament. But after that game, we organized a team lunch and went out to eat together in between our games. And right away, you could see, if you were just looking at our players and really the family and the parents too, it looked like these kids have been best friends for 20 years, their whole life. And it was just, I think that's a bigger testament to the kids and kind of who they are. But I think the biggest thing was just putting them in a situation where they can grow with each other and bond with each other outside of the organized basketball activity. And right away, you could see it on the court. The next game we played, I think we still lost a pretty close one again. But I mean, right away they were trusting each other more. They were having more fun. They're smiling, they're laughing, and it you could just tell like that chemistry that was created from just one lunch together, 2 hours, really translated onto the court. And so from then on, I mean, I've always been huge on off the court, activities to continue to build the camaraderie. But I think it's really, really important to do it early on in the season to make sure you're kind of level setting and making sure you're starting off on the right foot. And especially in the travel and the youth travel level, that's so important to get kids together and know that it's bigger than basketball and try to have them get to know each other as best they can. And for us, that was just a phenomenal way to do it.
I think it's so cool to provide those experiences for players because not only are they, bonding in a way that's outside of basketball, but I think for me as a coach, one of the things I always got a lot of value out of was you really get to see a different side of your players' personalities when they're off the
Right.
court. You get to see, the things that they talk about, or the way that they express themselves, and the way that they like just carry themselves and interact. And you're like, whoa, like I would never guess like you were into this, or like, you're, a certain way on the court, but then like you get off the court and you're, a certain way like that. And it's like you just the insight you get on them as people is like you can't replicate that on a basketball court. You have to get them outside the court to see it. And I imagine you probably learned a
Exactly.
lot of interesting things about your guys when you took them outside of that environment and just let them talk amongst themselves and
Yeah.
listen to those conversations, right?
I mean, you do, and for better or for worse, right? Like I know just listening to them talk, it's like you realize how much they're influenced by social media, and even like NBA players, for example, too. It's very similar. You kids at that age, you really want to reenact what they see on TV, or the older kids at the school or whatever it is. So yeah, for better or for worse, I think for coaches too, like it's cool to see for the kids to see the coaches outside of on the court activity, and you can kind of see the coach's personality a little bit better. And I think it helps them kind of break their walls down a little bit and open up more to the not only the players but the coaches too, to be a little more open, a little more coachable, and just able to kind of bond in that way, which helps tremendously on the court.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. That's great to hear. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, let's shift to idea of maintaining growing player confidence. Let's start with the things that you've noticed, Coach, about what affects players' confidence. What do you kind of notice, or what have you observed and seen are the sort of things that affect a player's confidence? And then from there, how do you kind of address those and try and remedy those things that you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really just negativity. And I know this is a pretty big buzzword of culture, but it really boils down to what culture are you creating as a coach, and what atmosphere are you portraying? As a coach, you're kind of the leader of the team, and everyone's going to follow from the top down, kind of your lead. And I think a really, unfortunately, a big way that I think a lot of players can become discouraged and kind of lose that confidence is when a coach is too demonstrative with their reactions. To certain things, like let's say a player A makes a mistake and he travels, turns the ball over, whatever it is, makes a mistake, and the coach is too demonstrative with how they react, whether they're shrugging their shoulders or throwing their hands in the air or putting their head down and shaking their head or whatever it is. I think that kind of weighs on the player too. They see that, and that's going to show that, shoot, like I can't do that again. If, like, let's say he drove into the lane, ball dribbled off his foot, turned it over, and he sees his coach and they're reacting in a negative way. Chances are he's probably not going to make that same move and dribble into the lane again. He's probably going to pass it off and be passive. And that I've seen that happen a lot, within some coaches who will do that, and it affects the kid, I think, in a very negative way. And another way too is just I think as a coach, you need to look at how you're reacting to those negative situations, to a mistake being made by a player. I've seen a lot of coaches, and some coaches have this philosophy, and I'm not necessarily saying it's right or wrong, but a player will make a mistake, like say travel or turn the ball over and miss a defensive assignment, and they'll get yanked right away and they'll get pulled up. And I've always seen that, and I've never really understood why, and I've never really agreed with kind of that philosophy of, if you make a mistake, you're done, you're out of the game right away. Even if I've seen some players who will start, they'll win the tip ball, they'll go down and travel, and they'll get taken out right away. And I think that can really weigh on a player and really hurts their negativity, and it hurts their confidence
Yeah.
to be able to go out and play loose, play free, play their style of basketball. It's adding a lot more pressure that they don't need onto them. So I think as coaches, we kind of need to look at ourselves and how do we react to mistakes that are happening on the court. We always say turn the page, right? We preach that of, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it, turn the page. But if you as a coach are reacting negatively, or for example, pulling a player because he made a mistake, that's us showing them that we're not turning the page. And if us as a coach, if you're not turning the page, how can you expect your players to? Right? Like I don't think you can
Right.
expect that from them. So I think a big way, to be able to show confidence and instill confidence in these kids is, not reacting in a big, expressive, demonstrative way, to a mistake.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard, I know, and I know that sometimes you almost like instinctually react to something, and it's like, oh, you want to catch yourself. I've been there before where like a player made a mistake, and I
Right.
instinctively wanted to like react a certain way, but I was like, no, I gotta like catch myself from doing that because I don't want to be somebody who says something or has a certain expression on their face, and then all of a sudden, players are upset or they lose their confidence and to your point, I think, and I'm sure you've seen this before too, where, when players feel like they're going to get pulled after they make a mistake, I think they play like really tentative and they're really frozen because they play
Right. Exactly.
trying not to make a mistake rather than playing freely and playing like loosely. I'm sure you've probably seen this before.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like you're playing then not to lose rather than
Yeah,
playing to go win the game. And I think that affects the team in a really negative way. And I just think a way to counteract it, I think, us as coaches, we need to expect that a mistake's going to happen. We know, or, really tell ourselves, okay, players, they're going to make mistakes today in this game. No team plays a perfect game. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. So I think if we can internally kind of look in and say, okay, my team, we're going to make mistakes today. Um, and then know what you're going to do when those happen. I think that would help, us a lot to be able to just compartmentalize those mistakes into not showing it to our players. And I think really not showing it is going to give them confidence too to go out and play and really not worry about it and really truly turn the page.
for sure. So let me kind of flip that then on you, Coach, because I completely agree about the idea of the way that you react and the way that you respond to things can definitely kill a player's confidence, so to speak. So when you're thinking about your coaching and creating an environment that's a positive one where players feel, confident and uplifted and they feel like it's a lot of positive energy in the gym. Like what are you kind of purposefully putting into your program or your practices or whatever it is, whatever the case may be, to infuse positivity and infuse that more, good feeling, positive energy?
Yeah, I really think it's the exact opposite of what we were just talking about. I think it's if a player makes a mistake, I always try to go up to them and just say, hey, it's fine. Like you're good. Let's worry about the next play. Don't let this mistake, mistake number one compound into mistake number two. Just make sure we're going to the next play and then I'm gonna show them that myself. I'm not gonna react in a bad way, but I'm just gonna say, hey, turn the page, next play. Let's go make the next one. And a thing I like to do too is specifically when it's a player who's maybe missing shots and they're getting down on themselves, or their shot just isn't falling today, or they're not playing well. I'll try to make a point to go up to them and just say, hey, like give them a positive. Hey, you're a great shooter, or hey, you
Yeah.
drive the basket really really well, and you get to the foul line at a great clip, or you're a great 3-point shooter, and then kind of give them the next one of like, hey, you're a great shooter, but hey, since it's not falling today, let's try getting to the foul line, or let's try driving to the hoop, to see a couple shots fall and then keep shooting from there. But really, just try to tell them like not to be more passive. Don't play more timid now that you're not playing well or not shooting well. I mean, keep shooting, they'll fall. I've told that to countless players in the only 2 years I've been coaching. I've probably said that phrase more times than I can count. Of, hey, I know your shots aren't falling today, but keep shooting. Like you're a phenomenal shooter. I've seen it in practice. We've all seen it in practice. We've seen the work you're putting in, and we see how good of a player you are. Just keep shooting. They'll fall. They'll eventually fall. And it's really just creating that culture of positivity and trying to uplift, your players at every single turn. It's in those moments when they're making a mistake or they're not playing well, it's really easy to kind of turn it on them and kind of put the blame on someone else. But if you're gonna, I think you really got to use those times um, to encourage and reinforce the positivity that you're trying to convey, and that encouraging and uplifting atmosphere that you really want to make a thing.
Yeah, you bring up a really cool point, about, you know, understanding, I think, as a coach, the idea that, there's nobody's shooting 100%, right? Nobody's shooting 80, 90% really from the field. Even the best shooters are making, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, four and a
Right.
half out of 10 maybe. And that you don't want to ruin a player's, confidence if they got wide open looks, because if they're not shooting the ball, and I remember I've told my girls this before, right, where they pass up on open shots, and I'm like, you passing up on an open shot is the worst thing that would happen right now. Like, we need you to
Right.
shoot,
Right.
otherwise we're in even worse trouble. And I think, to kind of reframe that conversation, kind of like you mentioned, it's like, no, we like, I don't care if, you miss the next 10 necessarily. Like, if you're open, like, you have to shoot it, because once you stop shooting, then things that we're trying to do offensively or whatever we're trying to do isn't going to work, and players are going to, completely sag off, and then they're going to, double team or help on someone else easier. And it's
Right.
interesting that your players almost have to realize, right, that like they need to play confidently for the game itself to be played the way that you want it as a coach. Like, no matter what's happening, they got to maintain their confidence.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the beauty of starting your coaching journey at the youth level is you're able to kind of practice and really demonstrate these tactics in a low pressure environment where you're not at the collegiate level and these games aren't being played for national titles or anything like that. And I think it's just a great area to help these kids get better, but also get better yourself too, and make sure that you're progressing as a coach at the rate that you want to as well.
I wanted you to kind of touch on that. I feel like that's a good place to kind of bring this up for maybe those listening who uh, are removed from this, or maybe who aren't really aware of what this demographic is like. Kind of talk us through, the kind of the ups and downs, maybe some of the challenges and triumphs that come with working with the age that you do, because the age that you're working with, there's so many life changes happening with the guys, or I guess boys technically, that you work with, and so many things outside of basketball that are happening. So what are maybe some of the things that you maybe encounter that they're kind of just going through in life in general, that you have to kind of, make sure that they, keep their heads up and are confident, and you're still building them up as they grow into men?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is kids at this age, they're just trying to fit in wherever they're at, and they just want a
Right.
place to belong, and they want to know that they matter and that what they're doing matters and that they're making a difference with where they're at. And that rings absolutely true with a basketball team. It's you just want to know that you're in the right place and that you can contribute where you're at, and that you do fit in and that you do belong here. And I think I try to, as much as I can, reinforce that belief with each kid that I coach is that, hey, you're here for a reason.
Mhm.
I want you here. The players want you here. Everyone else around here wants you here, and just make sure that they know that they fit in and that they matter to this team, and that this team wouldn't be the same without them. And just making sure that they know that they're where they belong. They're right here where they need to be, and nowhere else. I try to really encourage and have them remember, like, just be where your feet are at. Try not to think too far ahead. It's really easy at the middle school level to start to kind of have your mind wander and have those dreams and those goals and those aspirations really start to kick, and those tires start to kick of, man, I want to play at the high school
Yeah.
level, or I really want to go play D1, or I want to be the next Steph Curry, or whatever it is, of trying to just help them remember, like, hey, let's just be where our feet are at right now, and let's keep doing the work every single day so that you can get to where you want to go. And I mean, ultimately, that's why I'm here, why I coach, and that's why we all do it, right? Is that we really want to get these kids to where they want to be in life. And at the end of the day, that matters a lot more to me than the wins and losses. And to be able to help them reach their goals and reach their dreams of whatever it is. Maybe it's making the eighth grade team next year, or the eighth grade A team, or maybe it's making varsity as a freshman, or whatever it is. I just want to be able to put them in positions and situations to where they can go achieve those goals, and ultimately help them get there.
Yeah, I like the idea of, just kind of reminding them to be where their feet are, like wherever it is you are, like be there, because, at your level, I'm sure you are working with, in some cases, boys who've been playing for a while, and they're traveling and they're playing, and maybe basketball is a big part of their life, and maybe they're starting
Absolutely.
to feel like a certain level of like pressure to, play up to a certain standard, or they feel pressure being put on them, or they're putting a bunch of pressure on themselves. And there's this kind of tendency, I think, to maybe think of like, okay, like, what's going next for me, like what's going to happen to me in high school, do I want to play in college, like there's all these things that are going on. And I'm sure that, as you mentioned, one of the things that you're really working on is to make sure that they kind of are in the moment that they're in, and they're kind of, taking things one step at a time. Because like you mentioned, it's really easy, I feel like, especially if you're taking basketball that seriously, to get way ahead of yourself, or have other people maybe externally putting, a lot of pressure or expectations on you.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's so important just to invest in them in the off season, and in the off court activities, like we were talking about earlier, of building that relationship, and building that bond that, a coach has with his players, is invest in them off the court. Because we got to help them know that life is more than basketball, and um, there is activities outside of it that mean a lot, and that you can find, kind of find, who you are in off the court activities as well. And I just think, investing in them off the court really pays dividends, for them, not only on the court, but really for the rest of their lives as well. That
Yeah.
I don't think a coach truly ever knows the impact that they have on the kids' lives. And I can only say that because I've had some amazing coaches in my life that, one, I still keep in contact with to this day, and two, have just made a phenomenal impact on my life, and really honestly helped me kind of become the man I am, and kind of helped me to be where I'm at right now. And that's all a coach wants to do, and
And
that's exactly what I want to do. So
that should be what it's all about right there. That's
right.
awesome. That's really cool. Um, this question popped into mind, and it's definitely something that I think I want to hear your thoughts about, and that is, with whether you're training, you're working with guys, you're doing skill training, you're in a practice situation, that those types of situations when you're practicing with your guys, you could really do a lot to create a practice environment where your players feel good about themselves. They feel confident about themselves after. They feel energized. They feel like it was a really good practice. I've definitely seen practices that fit in that category. I've unfortunately seen practices that kind of fit in the other category. So I wanted to ask you this before it slipped my mind, about kind of your practices or the training or the things that you do with your guys. How do you kind of make sure that they leave feeling good about themselves? What goes into that to make sure that at the end of this, they're going to feel great and they're going to feel energized and love what they just did in practice?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I love to start practices with a question of the day. And I know that might be, kind of cheesy or corny, but I had my high school coach. He did this for us, and I played for him for 4 years, and every single practice, without fail, without ever missing it, we would start with a question of the day. And I think it was, for me, it was I thought it was a phenomenal way to start the practice off on the right foot, and we were all kind of in the same page. And it was great for us to just debrief after being in school for 7 hours. We'd go to school from 8 to 3, and then practice at 3:15. And in a lot of ways, it's just so go go go, when you don't have time to just kind of sit and enjoy the moment, and kind of, again, be where your feet are at, and take everything in. And for us, that was just a great way to decompose, and just really just kind of compartmentalize the day, and help us kind of reach the next step in the day, which was starting practice. And there was always humor involved with it, and it was a great way for the players to get to know each other more, but really for the kids to get to know the coaches more, and hear their
Yeah.
answers to whatever question of the day it was. And it would always spark, great conversation, and then, different opinions, and then you'd, kind of have some playful banter back and forth. And so I try to do that with my teams as well now, of starting with the question of the day. And I'll either have someone come, one of the players come bring one, or, I'll think of one myself for that day. But it's just a great way for players to kind of get to know each other more, and for us to kind of start the practice. But I think, in terms of the more nitty gritty answer to that question, I think a big thing is just keeping the flow of your conversations with your players, two-sided, and keeping it conversational. I think it's really easy for us coaches to kind of get in the mindset of, we got to teach, we're the teacher, we need to tell them what to do, and go from there. And I think it's easy for us to just kind of get in the mindset of a one-sided conversation where we're not giving the players the stage to voice their opinion or to, give us their ideas or their thoughts on whatever it is we're talking about. So I always try to make sure to ask my players, like, hey, what did you guys think of the game this weekend or the tournament we had? We went 2-2 or we went 1-3 or whatever it is. Like, what did you guys think went well? What do you think didn't go well? What are some areas we can work on? Because I mean, this as a coach, we can only see so much in a given practice or in a given game or whatever it is. And a lot of times, if you just kind of stop to ask your players a question or hey, how's it going? They're going to share something that maybe you missed or you didn't see that's going to help the team. And that's going to give them, all the confidence in the world to know, again, that they're part of this team, that they matter, that they belong here, and, that they have a spot on this team, and that, it really wouldn't be the same without them. And I've just seen that really, really help grow their confidence. And it's just an easy way for us to be able to do that too, because it doesn't take more than, maybe a 30-second conversation of, hey guys, how did this tournament go? Like, how do you think you guys did? What are some things we did well? What are some things we didn't do well? And expect, in my experience, if you ask them, they're gonna. I mean, it's like putting a quarter in a machine. They're just gonna talk, because they just want to give their opinion, and they, just want to give their 2 cents on whatever it is that we're talking about, and so they really enjoy it. They love it, and it just helps them kind of walk away from practice feeling like, okay, yeah, like my voice was heard, my opinion was heard today, and I think it helped the team be better because of it. And that's just going to do numbers for their confidence. And I think the second thing too is, try not to interject all the time into practice. What I mean by that is it's so easy to coach every single teachable moment. And I just think there's some times where we just need to kind of let things go and let practice go. Because if we stop to teach at every single moment, I mean, you wouldn't get anything done, because right, like you'd just be talking and teaching them at every step of the way, and there would be no flow, there would be no continuity, and you would just be you talking the whole time. And I had a awesome coach tell me once, or I heard this on a podcast once, of try to talk honestly as little as possible during a practice. You never it really, at the high school side, maybe not, this isn't as true on the middle school side, but you don't want to be talking for the majority of practice. You really want them playing, you want them getting better, and you don't want them hearing your voice for most of practice. So I just think, and this is very true for, when you get to 4v4 or 5v5 at the end of practice, whenever you do it's really easy to stop every single possession and say, freeze where you're at. And then, guys, what's wrong with this scene here? It's just easy to kind of get into that mindset as a coach, of stopping practice every 10 seconds to teach a moment. Whereas, if you're going to let them play through some things, it's going to help them teach themselves how to, maybe work through this problem or work through this issue on the court. And it's going to help kids speak up and start to take over more of like a leadership role on the court. And that's again going to do wonders for their confidence and really help them to start to grow into their role with the team, and again know that they have a voice, and that they're allowed to speak up. That's just the biggest thing, is creating a culture of openness to everyone voicing their opinion, not just the head coach. And then that goes for your assistant coaches as well, and maybe your manager, your stats guy, whoever's there. You want everyone to be able to feel like they can chime in and try to help the team out by voicing their opinion.
When you talked about, letting your players kind of voice your opinion, are there certain things that maybe they've said to you that have really stuck out to you, or maybe like caught you off guard or surprised you? What are some of the things that you have kind of heard your players kind of mention to you when you kind of give them that voice and that power?
Yeah, I mean, one kid comes to mind in my AAU team. Looking back, and I can't remember exactly what he would say, but I just feel like every time I would give that question of, hey guys, like, what needs to be going better, whether it was in a timeout, whether it was post game, whether it was pre-game, whether it was in the practice. And I remember a couple different moments where he just like flipped a switch and basically turned on coach mode. And he was 13, and he just started kind of going into the X's and O's of like, guys, hey, we gotta we got to do this on defense because they're doing this, and hey, on offense, you got to look down low because they're overshadowing, whatever it is. Like I think those moments stick out to me quite a bit because it helps those more natural leaders kind of step up and give their opinion. And I think as at that age too, and really at whatever age it is, sometimes hearing something from your peers and your teammates goes a lot more of a long way as opposed to maybe your coach saying it for the 12th time. If you're going to hear, Eric, your teammate, talk about boxing out harder and limiting them to one shot on the offensive possessions or whatever it is, you've heard your coach say, I say that all the time, and my players make fun of me for it all the time. But if you hear it from, Eric, your teammate, sometimes it might resonate a little bit harder and a little bit more, a little bit deeper with your teammates because they've got that bond with their player that you've already established through, again, those off-court activities and creating that culture of positivity.
Yeah, and what a way to, be able to tell as a coach that your team is bought in when you got your own players who are doing the coaching or trying to instruct people on what to do. It's like, all right, I know that, this particular guy or girl is sold on what it is that we're trying to do, and they're on
Right.
board and they're trying to get everybody else on board. It's like having another coach on your staff who just happens to be playing for you too. I mean, what a great feeling that is.
Exactly. Sure is.
So there's a lot of high pressure situations that happen, and I know you alluded to talking about keep shooting if things aren't going well, and you mentioned a couple other things as well. But and in coaching, high pressure situations, it's all relative. I know we're coaching the game of basketball, but there's on the court situations that happen, in game situations, things where players are feeling pressure before, during, after a game. When you have those high pressure situations, when you can just feel the tension, so to speak, in the gym, what are those conversations like with players to either you know keep them level, help them rise to meet whatever the occasion is? How do you kind of manage it when you know that it's going to be a big moment for your players?
Yeah, I think the conversation starts with body language, and that starts with the head coach, and the coach, really the coaches in general. But the players in a high pressure situation, the players, I mean, it's human instinct. You're going to look to the leader to see how they're reacting, to how they're, how are they poised, how are they composing themselves right now. So for me, I try to stay as poised as I can, as level headed as I can, and really just be the same as I have been all year or in practice, not changing my tune now, keeping my composure, keeping my head, not reacting, not overreacting to the moment, right? Of just, again, being where my feet are at, staying calm, staying poised. Because there's no reason to add any extra, pressure that's unnecessary for these kids. There's already enough pressure in the moment. They don't need any more from their coach. They're looking to their coach for guidance. And I think for me personally, and it's just really part of my philosophy is just staying peaceful, staying calm, grounded, and not adding any extra pressure for them. Because I think, your reaction to the situation, whatever it is, if you're down to, up to, whatever it is, your reaction is going to just show them how confident or how not confident you are in your kids. And the more under pressure and more poised you can be, the more confidence that you're emulating to your kids. And again, the more confident that they're going to be in turn because of it. So really just staying poised under pressure and not doing anything to elevate the moment farther than it already is. And again, that really starts with body language and making sure that you're calm as can be and that you're translating that right to your kids and your players to make sure that they're not overreacting in the situation as well. And then really just voicing it, and it's be a little bit easier on the high school side as opposed to the middle school side of, guys, we've been here before. You guys know what to do. You've been playing basketball for 12 years, whatever it is, 5 years, whatever it is. This is nothing new. This isn't anything you haven't seen before. You've been in pressure filled situations. Like, let's just play how you normally play. Keep your head, keep your poise. Try not to, just stay cool under pressure and kind of do what we've been doing all year in practice. It's just another game. At the end of the day, this is something you've been doing your whole life, and just try to, again, just let's be where our feet are at, and no reason to add any more extra pressure to them that's not needed.
And is that
Because
Go ahead. I was going to ask you about the just you particularly maintaining your composure and the things that you mentioned about body language. Is that something that always was easy for you? Did that come easy to you? Is that something you kind of had to train yourself to do?
that's a great question. Yes and no.
Yeah.
I naturally I'm a very competitive guy, no matter what it is, whether it's rec league softball or volleyball or whatever it is that I play. I want to win, and it's if I'm not winning, I'm not happy. I'm not out there having a great time. And for me with coaching, it kind of switched a little bit to where, it's not true every time, but sometimes I'll find myself being able to more easily take a step back from the game and kind of look at it from a bird's eye view and take
Hmm.
myself out of it for a little bit. And I think that helps a lot to be able to do that, of taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and looking at the game from a 360-foot view. And that helps me stay under pressure and under poise. It helps me not have my heart beat too fast. And again, I've only coached at the youth level, so it's kind of easy for me to say that. I haven't been in a gym. I haven't coached in a gym with 2,000 screaming fans, or a student section that's chanting maybe not nice things at my players. I haven't been a part of that yet. I haven't coached in that area yet. And um, but I would say naturally it has come pretty easy to me, of being able to kind of step back, and usually, now that I think about it more, it kind of hits me early on right away. Like if it's a whatever it is, if it's a high pressure situation, it'll hit me for the first 2 seconds, and then it passes and it'll go away, and then I'm back to kind of feeling more poised and more normal as I normally do. And I know that's not the
Yeah.
case for everybody, but for me, that's kind of been the experience of being able to kind of pretty easily take a step back and see the game from a bigger view, and kind of go back into it and be better off because of it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm thinking for my players as I'm trying to think of some of the more raucous environments that some of my players have been, especially on opposing teams senior nights or things that are against like a
Oh
rival,
yeah,
so to speak. It's funny, like they'll talk about some of the nerves or some of the things that they feel leading up to it, and even I might feel a little bit something. No, this game just feels a little bit differently, but then they'll say, and I kind of feel the same way, as like once warm-ups start, it's like, all right, it's just basketball. Like there's that
right.
familiarity of just like getting into warm-ups, getting into your routine and everything. And I think that, for it's hard to do, but I think kind of to your point, as you mentioned, the more you can just kind of make it seem like, all right, this is just, it's just another game, just like every other game. The things we need to do to be successful in this game may be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, we're trying to get the ball in the hoop. We're trying to deny them to get the ball in the hoop. The dynamics of what we're trying to ultimately get done don't change whether there's 5,000, so to speak, people in the stands. Again, a little easier said than done, but I think also like, kind of made me think about things that, I'm just thinking of ideas now for coaches who might have players in that environment. Shoot, in your practices, get the speakers out, get the noise out, get something going
That's a
here,
great point.
simulate all that. I've done that once
Absolutely.
before, and it was like they could barely hear me, and I was like, yeah, that's what it's going to sound like. You're barely going to be able to hear me or hear each other, and I was like, oh, that's going to be pretty loud. And then at the end of that game, I remember like, yeah, coach, I think it was actually louder than that. And I was like, all right, well, you got the point, you got the idea, so
Yeah,
that's fun.
yeah.
Um,
That's a great point. I think just in practice in
cool.
general too, the more you can emulate game like situations, the better. And that's a great point,
It's fun.
especially if you have access to big speakers.
Yeah, get some big speakers, get loud, and everything like that. Makes a unique practice environment. I'd be
Oh, it
remiss,
sure
Coach, if
does.
I didn't ask you this because this is a unique. I think we all deal as not the right term. I think we all have a lot of situations with parents and guardians, and you're in an
Right.
interesting position where when you're working in the AAU and the travel scene, you have parents who are putting a lot of time, putting a lot of money. There's a lot of investment in their kids, and in some cases, maybe a lot of pressure being put on them. And there's conversations that you're having with parents about their kid, where they're at, what they need to maybe potentially improve on, this, that, or whatever. And I wanted you to kind of speak about, how important is it for you in those conversations with your parents to keep them positive and make sure that you and the parent are both working together to help the kid grow and make sure the kid's having a positive experience.
Yeah, that's very important. I think you don't want to come across as negative to your parents, and you also want to come across as genuine and that you do care for your kids and their kids ultimately. And, that you are there for the betterment of them and you are there for them and not yourself. I think that's huge to be able to convey and again, stay poised and calm and, I would say reinforce to the good things about their kid, their son or daughter. Again, share with them the great experiences you've had so far with them and the things that you've loved that you've saw from them of, hey, they've been a great teammate or they've really done a great job of hitting the open teammate when the pass is right, or they've done a great job of passing up good shots for great shots, or whatever it is, of reinforcing the good that they've done first and foremost, really to start the conversation. I believe you never want to start the conversation negatively or on a sour note. That's kind of the whole tone of the conversation in a way that you don't want it to go. So, starting positive and whether you're talking to your parents or your players, I think it's crucial and it's essential that you always start with the positive of what they're doing that's right, what they're doing that's good. And then you can kind of get into the stuff you don't want to, which is, maybe the stuff they're not doing great at or the stuff maybe you could see some improvement at. But the big thing is even if, you're kind of talking about those negative things, that you're painting it in a good light of, I'm sharing this with you for the betterment of you or for the betterment of your child to help them get to where they want to be. Because, as a coach, if you're only focusing on the good and the positive and the great, I think you're doing your players a disservice and you're not challenging them enough to get to where they want to be and to help them get better. So I know I've preached a lot about positivity and encouragement tonight, but I think it's equally as important to make sure you're addressing the negatives as well, because you're going to be cheating them if you're not holding them accountable and you're not making sure um, you're helping them progress at the rate that they want to and the rate that's going to help them make their goals, whatever they may be.
And that's very delicate, I imagine, of a conversation to have where you have to word things a certain way because every word that you choose, you got to be, careful about the way that it comes off
Yep,
or the intent about what you mean it, and things can be
absolutely.
misinterpreted and everything. And I think that if the parents already trust you and they already believe that you have the kid's best interest in heart, that you're going to have some leeway with when you make those,
Right.
criticisms or critiques or um, suggestions for improvement. But I think to your point, like it's not easy, and sometimes the way that you maybe are saying something can definitely be heard or interpreted in a different way than maybe you intended.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out of building that foundation first, because I'm a very, very strong believer that there's in my opinion at least, what's worked for me and what I've seen worked well for the coaches that I have is first establishing the trust, establishing the relationship, establishing that you're there for them, you care about them, you love them, you're there for their betterment and not your own. Establishing that relationship, and then you can coach them. I've had coaches kind of do the opposite of, they're going to coach hard first and they're just going to start yelling and they're going to start screaming, and they didn't establish the relationship first. And
Mm,
naturally, it's human nature. You want to wall up, you want to close off yourself to that negativity and that sort of, um, you know, aggressiveness right away. Whereas on the flip side, if you establish that trust and that relationship first, they're going to be a lot more welcome and a lot more receptive to what you have to say, and they're going to be a lot more coachable for it. And that goes for the parents too. I think that's why I really, and you've heard me preach it all night of just the off the court activities, whatever it is, whether you're volunteering, whether you're going to the local park and playing soccer, I mean, whatever it is, of just investing in them off of the court, and showing them that you truly care is so crucial in the development of your relationship with them. And it's your success is a direct result from that. I'm a big believer in that for sure.
no, that's really cool. Like you said, a lot of that off the court stuff, because you as a coach, right? You are, especially I mean, at all levels, but I imagine you are expanding your players, knowledge of the game, their understanding of the game, they're learning things maybe that they never learned, or I'm sure as you've come across, right, players are maybe facing their, first real, tests of adversity or things where maybe the game came easier to them when they were younger, and now, maybe the skill levels just gotten bigger, or they're facing a bit of a challenge learning a new skill set or trying to develop a skill set for the first time, that that their ability to stick with it and persevere through that. I mean, it's super important that they feel that they can make those mistakes when they're trying to learn something for the first time, because I imagine there's a lot of teaching that's happening that you're trying to do and get your guys to learn.
Right. And if you didn't establish that relationship first, that's going to go, they're not going to listen to you. That's going to go right over your head. That at the middle school age, really, I mean, it's, you got to establish that relationship. You got to have the respect. You got to have their trust in order to reach them, because it's not an easy task. And sometimes it can be proved to be pretty difficult.
Let me ask you, because I am curious about this now as I'm thinking about it. When you're doing skill work, when you're doing the teaching work of any kind, trying to get your guys to work on a skill or maybe learn something for the first time, are there certain things that you have found that are maybe especially, difficult for players to like grasp or get? Or are there things that you really have to really exercise that positivity and kind of teach that perseverance too? I'm just kind of curious at your level, maybe what are some of those things where, players maybe are struggling to kind of learn or kind of adjust to, I guess, as they're getting older with their basketball skill.
Yeah, yeah, that's a crucial question. I think the hardest thing that I've seen at this level is how they handle adversity,
Mhm.
because at a young age, it's, you don't always, for the fortunate ones, right? You're not always having to handle adversity every single day. And when it comes to the basketball court, or the soccer field, whatever it is, a lot of times you're going to see adversity for the first time in a big way, and a lot of times they don't really necessarily know how to handle it. And at that age, most of the time it comes out in either anger or tears. And and those are two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Like, it's one or the other. It's one extreme, and you kind of don't really know which one it's going to be. And so as a coach, you're having to kind of battle that range of emotions, and help them through that situation. And I had plenty of times in my only 2.5 years of coaching now, where I've seen both of them. I've seen the tears and I've seen the anger
Mhm.
come out as a response of whatever the situation is. Whether it's a ref made a bad call and threw you out, or you thought you didn't play very well and maybe you did, or whatever it is. I've seen it. I've seen a lot of situations of it already, and it's hard for them. And you feel for them, because
Yeah.
they just don't have that experience yet of how to handle adversity. And a lot of times at the high school level too, you may not have had enough situations to where how to handle adversity in any given situation. And so really just meeting them where they're at is so crucial in those points, and then in that situation. And for a coach is to not expect them to know everything, not expect them to know what and for us, it could be so easy. Like, I had one player this year who we our win-loss record wasn't great for the AU season. We had kind of a tough season in that column. um but we were playing in South Dakota, and we had a Friday night game that we had to travel to. So it was a full day of travel. And, we got to the gym and we ended up winning by like 20. And this kid, I thought it was his first game back from injury. He was one of our more talented players, phenomenal kid, great player, great athlete. Um, and he, thought he didn't play well. And it kind of came out, his reaction to that situation, it was tears, and he didn't think he played well. And from where I was looking at it, I was like, dude, you played awesome. Like, that was your first game back in, I think, 6 weeks from injury. You practiced once in that times frame, and I thought you played great, and we won. And it's just times like that where you kind of need to help them out of, you know things aren't always as bad as they seem, and sometimes you're your own worst critic. And helping them just kind of take a step back to see whatever situation they're in, and kind of look at it from a different lens outside of the situation, and really just kind of walking them through that. But it's a tough line, and it's not always easy, and it's not always black and white.
Yeah, and as I'm hearing you say that, it's one of those situations where I remember that I feel when I first had those conversations or were first, training players, I can tell that maybe my language wasn't necessarily the best, or what I could have said something better, or maybe a little bit more
Right.
positive. And it's definitely something I don't think coaches should, especially young coaches, necessarily kind of beat themselves up over, because I think with time you kind of get better at you know, help players persevere and help them when they struggle, because um, it's not something that is necessarily easy to do, like you mentioned. There's ways that you need to go about it, and I think through every experience you learn. But as we've kind of talked about before, I think if your heart is in the right place, even if your message isn't necessarily perfect, I think your guys or girls will understand that like you want
Absolutely.
what's best for them, and that, just like with parents, I think will go a long way and buy you a lot of leash with that relationship, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sure will.
Last question, Coach, before we hit our concluding segment. I want to ask and put it on you about your confidence as a coach. I think as we talk a lot about players' confidence, obviously, but as coaches, we got to be confident in ourselves and what it is that we're doing as well. So, talk to me about your confidence as a coach. Is it something that you've always felt pretty good at as you've been getting through it? Are there times when you kind of go through some ups and downs where your confidence wavers? And if that does happen, how do you kind of regulate yourself and kind of get yourself, right, and feeling, pretty high self-esteem?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and it's a question that I think is an awesome point out, and something that we definitely as coaches need to look at for sure. And it's I'm glad you asked it, and I wish every coach was asked that question, because it helps us kind of look in and see where we can be better. But I think for me, what came easy with the confidence was the relationship side of it, and that's why I really loved talking about this topic tonight. Is for me, it came very natural. Um, the whole relationship side, the human to human element, building the trust, building the relationship first. To me, that's um, I don't want to say second nature, but that's kind of where my strengths lie, and that's where it came easy for me. Where my strengths don't lie and where I'm really bad at is the X's and O's, and that. As a coach, you don't. That's a huge part of the game, and for me, that's just never where my strengths lied. I kind of relied growing up on. I was always the tall kid, and I was
Mhm.
decently athletic enough playing growing up to where I could usually just outrun or whatever it was players. I didn't really need to focus on the strategy of the game. And then I got to high school, and everyone else caught up in height, and I was no longer the tall kid. I was like one of the small ones, and that's where kind of the disconnect fell off of the my IQ, and the strategy wasn't as developed as it could have been. And I think for coaching right now, that's where I need to work at constantly to get better at. Whereas the relationship side comes easy, the X's and O's, that's something that I need to constantly work at every day, to continue to get better at. I was fortunate enough to kind of be able to realize that, so I
Mhm.
can kind of work on it early on. But that's definitely the hindrance in confidence for me is kind of the X's and O's. And what I do to combat that is just fill my brain with as much information and knowledge as possible. And Twitter's been a great resource for me, or X now, I guess you call it, has been a great free resource for all sorts of plays and drills and strategies and X's and O's, and um, different podcasts like this one, and there's some other basketball podcasts I like to fill my brain with and listen to. And it's really just kind of surrounding myself with knowledge of, I don't know what I don't know, so I want to try to know and learn as much as I can. Because it's at the end of the day, it's again, I'd be kind of cheating my kids and my players if I wasn't getting better. It's I
We're
heard
always
it said on
growing,
a
yeah.
podcast. It's like, right, like we challenge our kids to be better every day. We have to do the same for ourselves, and we have to get 1% better every day or whatever it is. We got to do the same as well.
Yeah. It's always, I think, good to look within and realize that, we're always growing, right? There's always stuff for us to learn. There's always new stuff out there, but not to use that to discourage us, but rather to be, take that as something to energize us, that, for all that we learned and all that we know and all the knowledge and strengths that we have, that there's more for us to, get better at and more for us to do. And at the end of the day, I think, and I get the sense that you're this way too. Like, if we have that desire to work on the things that maybe we're not strong at, like ultimately it's just going to be what's best for kids is that we continue to work on it. And so,
Right.
like, don't worry too much about your maybe limitations, right? If you're listening about certain areas or certain things, like grow on those and learn on those, because ultimately, it's not really about us. It's about the things that we're able to kind of pass on to our kids, and the better that we are, and the more prepared and the more that we learn and the more that we grow, ultimately we're just going to have better players and hopefully better people for the experiences that they have with us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I tell myself this every day is, I I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to know everything there is to know about basketball, and I'm not going to know what to do in every single situation on the court. Maybe they're going to run a defense that I've never seen. I might not know what to do in the moment. Like there are going to be
Hmm.
times when we don't know what to do, and just not add. We don't want to add. I've talked tonight about not adding pressure onto the kids. That's not necessary, and I think we got to do the same for ourselves. We don't need to add unrealistic expectations for ourselves that we need to know everything or we need to be the perfect coach or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
what's helped me is just surrounding myself with awesome coaches. And I've been very fortunate to coach with a really good friend of mine, and he's the better version of me in pretty much every way. He's great with the kids and parents and the relationships, but he's also really great at the X's and O's. And so
Awesome.
it's just surrounding, trying to surround yourself with awesome, like-minded coaches that, are on the same path and or that want the same, path in life as you do and really believe in the core values you do. And that's going to be a game changer for you.
Definitely. To wrap up, Coach, a couple questions I ask every guest. So starting with this first one, and I know you've shared quite a few, so hopefully you have another one you wouldn't mind sharing. But thinking back on your coaching career, what is a specific moment from your coaching career that you think by sharing it, our listeners would be able to learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one that comes to mind is probably my favorite kind of journey so far in my short time as a coach, and something that's tangible that I can see of, okay, coach makes a huge difference in these kids' lives. Is I had a kid in my AU team who was our point guard, really, really good player. He's a perfect coach's player. He's got everything that a coach looks for in a kid. He gives 110%. Phenomenal teammate. He's uplifting, encouraging, positive. He's got a good IQ and knows the game. But he was a little small, and on his main travel team in the winter, he wasn't necessarily the go-to guy. He wasn't the guy that they were running the offense through, and he wasn't out there scoring 20 points a game. He wasn't. I'm assuming he probably wasn't getting the shots up that he wanted to. And when I went and watched him play before, I had him come play on our team. It was evident that he was kind of the fourth or fifth guy on the team on the offensive side. And when we started, that translated to our team as well. And you could tell that he was so used to not being the first option that it affected his game. Of he was always looking to get his teammates open, and he was always looking to pass first. And where's my open teammate? Where can I hit him for the easy bucket? He wasn't necessarily out hunting a shot. He wasn't creating his own. Phenomenal player, really, really great player, but he just wasn't. You could just tell he hadn't had the experience yet, or maybe he hadn't had the right guidance, whatever it was, to kind of take over. Maybe he wasn't allowed to with on his previous teams, whatever it was. He just wasn't as aggressive as I think he could have been. And shout
Mm.
out to my coach, other coach I coached with, pointed this out to me first at the beginning of the year. He's like, dude, this guy, there's a really good player in here, and we just need to take that confidence for him and have it grow. And so from that was early in the season, and from then on, that point, we just started to work every day. We didn't sit him down and have a conversation or anything. We just, through our actions and through our body language and through our communication with him, every day, every practice, every game, we were just growing the relationship, trying to instill more confidence into him. And we started to see the progress throughout the games of, okay, he's taking more shots, he's being more aggressive, he's starting to take over more. And I still remember the very game that it all switched for him, and it all turned into the positive of, he scored, I think, like 20 points that game. He took over. He's dishing out assists. I had like 4 steals. I mean, it was the semis of a tournament that we were in, so it was a high stakes game, and he just played his butt off, and he played awesome. And that was kind of the switch for him. And it all culminated at the end of the year. We were down 8 with 30 seconds or 40 seconds left, and he dished it to our post, got an and one, got down 5. He got a steal, called the timeout. We got to play for our corner 3, hit it, got down 2, and then we got the ball back after they missed the free throw, and he ended up hitting the game winner 3 with like 2
Wow.
seconds left and just nailed it, and we won by 1. And it in that moment, it just like hit me of this whole, like, to see where he was at the start of the year to where he is now
Yeah.
is just night and day. And that was, it just kind of dawned on me the impact the coach has on his kids and his
Mm.
players. And that can be for the better and a positive, and it can be for the negative as well. And it was just,
Oh, cool.
looking back, it's just the coolest thing. And it's why we do what we do. It's why we coach. And it was just such a cool experience that I think if I could just relay anything to coaches is, like, it takes time, but Like, don't underestimate the impact that you have, even no matter how small it is. We never even, we didn't necessarily sit down with them and have a conversation. We just, in the little things each and every day, we just tried to instill confidence in him and help him kind of break out of that shell. And finally it worked. And I would just keep going. Just keep going.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it. That's like goosebump stuff right there. That's really,
Yeah,
really
it's
cool
cool.
to
Yeah.
hear you share that. Awesome, Coach. To wrap up, I give every guest what I kind of call a 60-second soapbox. So I'm not going to time you, so feel free to go over 60 seconds. It's just a catchy little title for it, I suppose. But I use it as a way for you to kind of get out a final thought, a closing message, a final idea, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You can kind of take it any direction you want, basketball wise, coaching wise, or otherwise. I mean, it's your soapbox after all. So, Coach, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the platform here and let you take it from here.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I think just kind of continue what I was saying of just invest in your players, and I think just show them love. Show them that you love them, that you care about them, that you're there for their betterment, and at the end of the day, and above all else, you're there for them, and you're there to help them reach their goals, help them get to where they want to be in life, help them to grow up to be the man or woman that they want to be, and help them to be the best version of themselves, and ultimately just love on them and show them that you care, and really honestly invest in them off the court. And this is so true at the high school level. Go to their choir concert or go to their band performance, or maybe they're in theater or whatever it is they do outside of basketball, or whatever it is you coach. Just show them that you care, and show up outside of basketball or whatever it is. And I think that just goes such a long way for them. And because at the end of the day, we coach for relationships, right? And we want to build it with those kids that we have the pleasure of coaching. And I think a great way to do that is investing in them off the court and just showing them that you love them and that you care for them, and that you'll be there. I think, I believe, I don't think a coach's job is ever done. I think that no matter, if you coached them once when they were in 5th grade, or you've coached them for 12 years, I think a coach always has not necessarily, maybe responsibility is a wrong word, or obligation, but I just think a coach's job never ends after the season's done. I think you can always be there for them. You can always, show up for them and help them along in life wherever they're at. Maybe they're 10 years down the road and they got kids of their own, but I think you can show up and be there for them and help them through whatever stage or journey of life they're in, whether it's on the court or off. And just keep going. I know I'm very young in my coaching career. Like I said, I'm 25, and I've got hopefully a long journey ahead of me. Or whether the journey's over and you can kind of see the light. I think just keep going wherever you're at in your coaching journey. The best advice I ever got, like I said tonight, was just be where your feet are at. And I think that's true for the kids and for us coaches too.
Love it, man. What a great way to end us off on. Completely agree with that. Be where you are, be where your feet are. I really, really love that quote. Coach Frederickson, man, I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. And even though you're young in your coaching journey, you dropped a lot of great insights, a lot of great wisdom, a lot of great stuff to reflect on. And I really love hearing your journey and all the stuff that you do for players and their confidence, and as you are growing yourself on this great coaching journey. So best of luck as you continue, and best of luck as you kind of look for maybe what's coming up next on the horizon as well. I know whatever it is you're going to do, you're going to thrive and be great at it. So Coach, again, appreciate it. Best of luck wherever this great journey takes you.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you having me on, man. And best of luck to you and your season and your coaching journey ahead. It was awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. This is a great platform, and this is really cool. So keep going with you as well. And I just appreciate you having me on.
Greatly appreciate that, and greatly appreciate all of you as well for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.